Hey guys, it's Jan for Chess24. Sinquefield Cup is over. Congratulations to Ding Liren for a fantastic victory in the tiebreaks against world champion Magnus Carlsen. And with the live action out of the way, it's time for some openings. This is Jan's Opening Clinic, the show where I do my best to answer Chess24 Premium members' opening questions. And what better way to get into the lovely topic that is chess openings than to warm up with a little Berlin. Do we maybe have a little Berlin? Let's find out. Best Berliner 28 is saying, hello Jan, in a recent banter blitz, Peter Svidler crushed me in an interesting line of the Berlin. E4, E5, and so on and so forth. We'll put it on the board in a second. Here he deviated from the Anand Topalov game from the 2016 candidates tournament with 15 Queen C2. I replied with Knight C6, but after Rook A4, I soon got a passive position, and Peter crashed through soon after. What can I do after 16 Rook A4 to get some payback the next time I play the Svitmeister? Thanks, Best Berliner 28. Let us have a little look. Sorry for the broken screen. This will keep happening. And as you can see, we have an engine running because, well, I trust myself. I trust Stockfish and Lila Zero even more. Knight to F6 played, pawn to D3, one of the big lines in the Berlin, Bishop C5, C3. Here nowadays there's a lot of people that play D5, so these lines that are discussed in the question are still topical but not as omnipresent as they used to be at the highest levels of chess. D6, Knight BD2, Knight to E7. This is one of the main moves, if I recall correctly. Laurent Fraissinet gave A6 here, which is also interesting in his video series on how to play the Berlin with black. But let's have a look at what happens here. Knight E7, white goes D4, pawn takes, bishop to B6. White is a great pawn center. The knight on D2 is a little clumsy. Black will look for ways to target that center. Rook E1, bishop to G4, putting pressure on this guy. A3, bishop H5, pawn to A4. Can't take this guy because of G4. A5 is a threat, so A6, bishop to F1. All of this, as was mentioned, is still fairly well-known stuff. And here, I believe you gave Rook E8 without commentary. Rook E8 looks a little bit slow to me. I believe in this position, one should be more aggressive and play knight to C6. Attacking the pawn on D4 once again. D5, knight to E5 is considered to be fine for black. So the point they have is this strange move, pawn to A5, which is a pawn sacrifice. If you take, then the knight gets cut off with D5, and white is doing well. So after A5, what black should do is take on F3. Knight takes F3 is forced, and now bishop takes A5, hitting the rook on E1. Things can get pretty crazy from here pretty quickly. White can play D5, for example, trying to break the coordination. After bishop takes E1, D takes C6. Black has two funky options. One is bishop F2, king F2, knight takes E4 check, king G1, BC6. When white has two very active bishops against the rook and a bunch of pawns, computer says it's about equal. So this could be one position you could look into. You could also look into D takes C6, bishop to B4, when things get just as crazy. CB7, rook A7, bishop A6, knight to E4, knight to D4, trying to jump here, with yet another mess after bishop to C5. That my computer evaluates as roughly equal. So I believe that is probably the best place to deviate, because after this rook E8, A5, bishop A7, you mentioned Svidler deviated with queen C2 from, or was it Anand Topalov? But what Anand played, queen B3, actually looks better to me. Keeping the queen out of the way, hitting B7, and I could not see a way how black should play this. After knight C6, rook A4 is once again an annoying option. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of this rook E8 move. I believe knight to C6 is the place to start digging. As in the game, yeah, queen C2, knight C6, rook A4. This didn't look so bad because the queen on C2, it's on this diagonal, and here it seems like you could be okay if you go bishop G6, threatening D5 and whatnot. So white should go bishop D3, and now this typical kind of pawn sacrifice, D5, E5, knight to E4, which white probably should not accept, because now D4 can be taken. Therefore, it looked to me like black should be kind of alright here. And the computer gives rook e3, queen d7, whatever, with a random position. But I do not like this rook e8 move because of queen to b3, as mentioned. So I would recommend going knight to c6 instead and checking this a bit further. But as far as I could see, black is kind of alright there. Thank you for the question, Mr. Berliner. Who's next? It's our boy. It's none other than Sushi Boy number 8. He says, "Hi Jan, I love your fantastic opening clinics." Wow, that's too much praise, but thank you. My question today: how should white deal with the following simplifying line in the classical King's Indian? Long line with 7 e takes d4. Quoting again Mamad Rajabov from Shamkir 2017. As usual, we shall put it on the board. Does white have an advantage after move 15, and is there any plan to convert it to a win? If not, what do you think of 10 knight c2 avoiding the simplifications? Or should white play knight takes c6 at some point to double the black c pawns? Let us look. d4, knight to f6, c4, g6, knight to c3, bishop g7, e4, d6, knight out, e5 castles, and e takes d4. This has never really reached mainline status, but it's a sneaky little sideline that especially Azeri players have used with good effect as sort of a simplifying weapon. Of course, knight to c6, the main move here. ed, knight d4, rook to e8, f3, knight to c6, bishop to e3, that's the main move. Knight c2 was also mentioned in the question. Knight to h5, queen to d2, and knight to f4, leading to simplifications. Yeah, the main line was the one given in the question, which has been played many a time. This kind of stuff. And as far as I can see, black is very, very solid here. Knight c3, bishop b7, knight d5. You don't have to do this immediately, but it is the most sensible plan. Bishop d5, cd, queen to g5, rook ac1. Here in the game, for some reason, rook ac8 was played. It's a Mamedyarov Rajabov game. But normally rook e7 is played, which looks more active, intending rook a8 followed by f5. I once tried to find an edge here. The computer likes it a bit, but I think it's nothing much there. Nothing. This is a good drawing horse for black players. So I'm not a big fan of this line. From the white perspective, the move that I like is, instead of rook fd1, the little move rook to f2. Looks a bit strange, but it's defending against black's main threat, which is bishop takes d4, bishop takes d4, queen g5, with the double attack of queen g2 checkmate and knight h3. And it's covering the e2 bishop, clearing the f1 square, sort of preparing bishop f1. And I could never understand what black wants here, because similar simplifying tactics are no longer really in time. After knight d4, bishop d4, bishop d4, queen d4, knight e2. Now we recapture with the rook, leave the knight on c3, so b6, knight d5 is not really an option for black. And if black goes bishop e6, he's just not in time after f4. f5 is already looming. This is just a sad, sad position for black. So you can't really do this, and I'm not quite sure what they want after rook f2. Like, you can take on e2, but then both rook takes e2 and knight d takes e2, keeping piece on the board, look fairly favorable for white to me. Therefore, yeah, I can't see a solution. Someone good, maybe Saric recently played knight to e6, but after knight e6 there seem to be a bunch of decent options. The simplest one to my mind, just to take bishop e6, rook to d1, and in the structure white just has an inherent advantage. After f5 the black king always gets a bit weakened. If not, knight d5 is there, c5 is there as an option. If we just stabilize, white is better. So yeah, I don't see what they want. After knight e6 you can also go knight c2. I might be missing some deep point here, but to me rook f2 looks like a very good way to fight for an advantage here. And could be a reason why this line is not more popular. There's also this knight c2 move, but this... has this become... oh no, sorry, 10 knight c2 instead of bishop e3. 10 knight c2. But this has become sort of a forced drawing line at the high levels as well. I've seen some games like knight h5, g4, bishop e5, stuff like that. And the line continues. But it looked like black was holding here. Point being takes queen h4 check with the perpetual. So yeah, to my mind, you want to go queen d2, knight f4, rook f2, and I can't see how black equalizes. Hope that helps, Mr. Sushi Boy. What else do we have? Wow, I'm answering quickly today. JohannWilhelmMoebius is saying, "Hi Jan, what do you think about e4 c6, d5, e5 c5, dc e6, 5a3? One of my games went bishop c5, queen g4, knight e7, knight f3 with interesting play. Do you think 5a3 is also a good variation after 4 knight to c6? Thanks, JWM, not to be confused with JW Stillwater." Let's have a look. Caro-Kann, even though I play it sometimes with black, is not exactly my main area of expertise. But I have seen this line before. And yeah, c5 becoming more popular again. Nowadays, as popular as bishop f5 almost at the highest level. c5, d takes c, e6. And yeah, a3 is just one of the main moves in this position. No, it's very logical. Preparing b4 if need be. So yeah, I absolutely think it's a serious move. Two things. First of all, yeah, I have never checked this in depth, but it looks promising for white to me. Bishop takes c5, queen g4, knight e7, knight to f3. The big point is there was some game, what was it, Topal of Navarra, where Navarra went for queen b6, but then after bishop d3 he realized this pawn might be poisoned. He did not take it and get a very bad position quickly. Yeah, it clicked in something like this a bit. It looks like white is better here. Some options, knight c3 is also possible, but even the most direct way to play something like this. I could not find equality for black, so queen b6 does not seem to work, and if you can't go queen b6, you have to play some more passive move, like some opening specialist, maybe Ryazantsev played knight to g6 here, bishop d3, knight c6, short castles, but it does look like white manages to hang on to his advanced pawn on e5 with some small tricks, some rook e1, castles, queen h5. And without having gone too deeply, I do agree that it seems to lead to interesting play and makes some sense. Therefore, after a3, I guess that maybe black should start with knight c6 just to rule out these queen g4 shenanigans. When after knight to f3, bishop takes c5. We have one of the main positions that can also be reached. If you start with knight f3, then a3, where yeah, I can't claim I'm qualified enough. b4 has recently been played by Grishu, bishop b6. He went for the direct b5 here against Navarra, won a nice game. So that could be a line to look into. Navarra played knight to b8, knight e7, knight g6 could also be an idea. And after knight to b8, bishop b2. I also was not fully sure what goes where and why. But it does look like it's certainly a playable line and a main battleground. In the 3c5 Caro-Kann these days, b5 obviously not forced. You can also play bishop b2 and you get to familiar positions. But yeah, I think a3 makes sense. I think black should start with knight to c6 to rule out this queen g4, and after that the real battle does begin. JWM also asked if a3 also made sense after knight c6, and I believe it does. I used to look at this a long time ago, maybe 2008 or something, before the Dresden Olympiad. For some reason I played some Caro-Kanns there. And back then I thought that knight takes e5, b4, g6 was the solution for black here. But I'm not so sure, because Compy Boy after bishop b5 check, he was quite optimistic for white. Bishop d7, queen takes d5. The old days I want to take here, queen e5, knight f6. But it seems like this is not all roses either. Knight c3, bishop c6, knight f3, bishop g7, whatever, castles. Oh, no, I think you start with bishop b2 to go rook d1 with tempo. Bishop b2, castles, rook d1. And it looked like white, well, he has an extra pawn obviously, but back then I thought it was enough compensation. But the computer did not fully agree with me and claimed that white is better here at bigger depth. Therefore, yeah, it's an interesting line as well. Black also has the option, if we stick with this g6 territory, to go for bishop g7 here and play some strange ending, which back then I thought wasn't fully equal, and I still don't think it is. Something like this. Oops, b6, however this goes. cb, knight b6, bishop e3, once again, the greedy compy says white is somewhat better here. So, yeah, it even seems to make sense after knight to c6. Of course, g6 is not forced, it's just what I thought was the clever solution. You can play something like knight f6, bishop b2, knight c6, but then after knight to f3, white also seems to get easy play. Therefore, yeah, I would say it works here as well, and after a3, probably the best black has is to play e6, transposing back to these lines, where, yeah, I believe, is where the main debates will take place in the near and distant future. JWM, keep pushing your a-pawn to a3. Intermove, saying, "Hi Jan, thank you for the amazing amount of work you're doing for Chess24. Thank you, thank you. Normally I play the King's Indian defense against d4, c4, knight c3, knight f3 setups, but recently I'm struggling a bit. I'm looking for a more safe choice against these setups. I know your video series are great, but that's so much theory to learn there. I'm looking for a safe, easy to learn, plan-based opening against these setups. Ideally, I always can play it against d4, c4, knight c3, knight f3, no matter what the move order is. I would like to begin to explore the knight f6, e6 territory. I like offbeat, but nevertheless a bit sound lines with some attacking potential. It would be great if your recommendation also works against the Catalan. I know I ask a lot, but I'm looking forward to your show and to this show and your suggestion. Yeah, you are asking for the Holy Grail. That's a question we pretty much get every opening clinic. I don't mean to belittle the question, but I don't have an answer. You're asking for, give me a quick and easy to learn sound system with attacking chances against 1 d4. I don't want to spend much time, but I don't want to be worse, and I also don't want it to be dull. These things just don't exist. Like, I can, as usual, list the main openings you have as a choice here, but I did do 4 video series giving you a complete d4, knight f6, c4, e6 repertoire, and I didn't do all these long series to bore you, because I thought, okay, if we want to fight for equality, we might have to spend some time. Having said all that, let's go through the usual options. After c4, e6, the Nimzo you can play without knowing much, you just castle and hope for the best. And after knight f3, d5 is what most top players do, and it's for a reason. But then you have to deal with the Catalan, and you have to know a line against knight c3. Sounds like after knight c3, a6 could be up your alley. It's not much to learn. It has a decent reputation these days. The point is that after cd, ed, bishop g5, you go bishop to e6, then knight bd7, and sometimes you go h6, g5. Chases bishop. Well, if the bishop goes to f4, you go bishop to d6. Obviously, there's more to it as well, but maybe a6 fits into your repertoire. Catalan does exist. Hard to give a shortcut here. I've recently been into this dc bishop g2 c6 system, but it's not sound and easy to learn. Or it's probably sound, but not easy to learn. Other than that, yeah, I did give some long speeches about bishop e7 in the past. If all of this is too much, you can play b6, arguably a bit less theory. After a3, bishop b7, knight c3, d5, you can probably sort of get by on feel. And after g3, you can play bishop b7, bishop g2, bishop e7, short castles, and then have a look around. Also not that much theory, also sound. But yeah, obviously I could also talk for 3 hours about any of these lines. I do prefer putting the pawn in the center with d5. So yeah, if you want to go knight f6, e6, that's more or less what you're working with. There's also bishop b4 check. I think we have some video series on the BOGO. Niklas Huschenbeet did one. Personally, I'm not a fan of the lines after knight bd2, castles a3, bishop e7, e4, d5. I feel these are dangerous for black. You can play d6 here if you want to bail out, avoid theory. But then once again, you risk being sort of worse and sort of King's Indian-y. There was a recent game, for example, Kayakin against Carlsen, which did not go so well for Carlsen. So yeah, those are the choices in knight f6, e6 territory. I guess the soundest sort of lazy opening is maybe the Queen's Gambit accepted, dc4. All you need to do is learn one line after e4. We have a question about that later on. And one line after knight f3 here. I don't know, this is a lazy line. It's not so bad. I'm improvising my answer here because I don't have one, so I just mention what I can think of off the top of my head. Obviously, the main line here is knight f3, knight f6, e3, e6, bishop c4, c5. Then you go a6, have a look around, and you can spend a lot of time learning theory, or you cannot. Other than that, there's a Slav, pretty good opening, has some theory as well. You can try to do a Magnus, you go d5, e6, a6 against everything. Then you argue that if they play g3, you take here and try to protect that pawn. Obviously, this continues as well. But yeah, maybe that's the opening for you. d5, e6, a6. Some troubles, like cd, ed, queen b3 here is a line you have to be aware of. There is knight f3, a6, some options here, e3, knight bd2, and so on and so forth. But you just do this. You go for knight c3, then you take on c4. If they take on d5 here, then you sort of argue the knight is misplaced, and you meet bishop f4 with a quick bishop d6. After knight c3, you can go full Magnus and play h6, or you can transpose back to the line I was talking earlier with knight to f6. I believe that's as good a lazy line as I can give you. The problem is, it might be harder to equalize than in more theory-heavy lines, but it's out there, and it's not too terrible. Oh, there's also knight f3, a6, bishop g5, which you have to think about. Probably bishop e7, or go full greedy with f6, but bishop e7 seems sounder. So, that's my recommendation. The alternative is sit through my video series. Thanks for the question, Mr. Intermove. What else is going on? Carnicero is saying, "Hi Jan, I've seen and heard quite a lot about a new exciting opening line. It has been discussed by some famous streamers and commented on by at least one super GM. The line goes 1 d4 d5 2 bishop e3 exclamation mark. As you might know, black's idea in these queen pawns openings is often to play c5. This move stops that efficiently. The long-term plan is to play f3 bishop f2 and e4, which with basically a winning position. My own analysis shows that 2 bishop e3 also works fine against 1 knight f6 and literally all first moves by black. What do you think? Is this the next big thing after the Trompovsky and the London? Thanks for a great show, Carnicero." Yeah, sounds like I missed some developments there. If it has been discussed by famous streamers and at least one super jam. Because to me this sounded a bit like, I don't know, the Swedish Reddit chess group for guys between 2000 and 2200 who said, you know what, we're too cool for a real opening question. Let us both ask a question about d4 followed by bishop to e3. But it seems like it's a much bigger movement and I was not fully aware of it. The move is obviously total junk here because black can go c5 anyway when d takes c5, e5 will lead to quick disaster. For example, if you go for your plan with f3 after d4, bishop f2, bishop c5, you can sort of resign, and the best that I can see after bishop e3, c5 is c3, when really your best hope is transposing to some exchange Slav, a tempo down, because here this bishop is really not happy on e3 and should go to f4, but isn't it beautiful that we can find such fresh ideas and discuss them with super grandmasters and on various chess streams. So yeah, best of luck with 2 bishop e3. Thanks for alerting me about it so I can now spend more time. I believe we have a question connected to this move coming up in the not so distant future. Yeah, bishop e3, cunning. Zeveraar. Oof, this sounds like an even longer question than a bishop e3 thing. He's saying, "Hi Jan, I like to play all kinds of ratey setups. I use them mainly to avoid the Slav, but I'm quite bothered by the solid 2g6. Unsurprisingly, all top players seem to approve of this variation. Yeah, it's pretty good. And maybe it even killed Kramnik's desire to try one knight f3, g3 setups even more frequently. I don't know if that's what made Kramnik quit classical chess. But yeah, it's a pretty efficient line against knight f3, g3. I remember he said something along those lines after his game against Naroditsky, Guitar Masters 2015. Knight f3, d5, g3, g6, bishop g2, bishop g7. By the way, we should give credit to Vichy, who played this in his World Championship match against Magnus. No, he was the first to put this on the big stage. Bishop g2, bishop g7, 4 d4, 4 c4 does not promise a lot. Yeah, I don't disagree. 4 castles e5 also looks very harmonious. Knight f6, castles, castles, c4 is the main line, but I find it hard to try for an advantage after dc. Knight a3, we'll put it on the board, c5, dc, c3, and so on. I guess this is more or less equal, and probably white should not hope to win too many games from this position. My question is, you use this line with black to draw your final game in the Thailand Open. I think that's enough of an endorsement from the black side. But could you provide me with some ideas, directions to look for an advantage with white against this variation? Many thanks in advance. Kind regards, Zeveraar. And unfortunately, the answer is nope. This is a good line. I do not know what white is supposed to do. As you pointed out yourself, a lot of top players are playing this, and currently black has been doing pretty okay. In this line, we are having a steady influx of more Super Grandmaster games here. We recently had, what do we have? Kayaking Caruana, and I believe Giri Kayakin and somebody else. So yeah, I agree with everything you said. I think this is a fairly decent drawing horse for black. Kramnik once won this against, who was it? Wei Yi with white. But yeah, as you mentioned, I played this myself with black, and I had a look at this endgame and I thought it should be fairly tenable from the black point of view. And for example, Caruana also did not seem to have too many problems here. After rook fd8, f4, there were a bunch of games, no? Like, what was Caruana's game? King f8, king f2, bishop g4. Little subtlety to provoke h3, so this pawn is hanging in some lines. 3, bishop d4, bishop d7, rook c7, rook c8. Rook c8 was the new move. And yeah, you get this type of stuff, which is not terribly exciting from either side. But I do believe that black holds without too many problems. So, I guess you know all this. The problem is I don't know much more. I think that white is a bit stuck in these lines. And in order to get a fuller game, they've tried all kinds of strange moves here, no? Like c3. I think Carlsen recently played c3 maybe. That at least stops c5. And, you know, the game continues. But of course, it's not a very principled way to play somehow. Black plays c6 or bishop f5. We recently had some games, bishop f5, queen b3, queen c8, c4, something like this. So c3 is an option. Knight bd2 is an option when, if black goes c6, now at least you can play some c4, a5, b3 type of lines as we've talked about in the past. Not that those are winning, but at least they do not allow any simplifications. After knight bd2, you also have to think about c5. So long story short, I agree. I don't know what white is supposed to do here. Of course, you can play c4. This is not a dead draw by any stretch. But after dc, both knight a3 and queen a4 check. I also kind of agree that black is doing okay. So yeah, I don't know. Put some pawns in the center. Go d4, c4. Looks like the trend is sort of going back to queen's gambits and Catalans and less raties. And d5, g3, g6 seems to be a big reason for it. Shout out to Vichy for putting this on the map. And nowadays, once again, as you mentioned, most top players do this with black and seem reasonably comfortable. I do not know where the discussions will go from here. I have a feeling it will probably continue being sort of random. 6 moves in these positions. Bishop f4, bishop e3. Maybe Carnicero, maybe this is the time to go bishop e3, queen c1, bishop h6. This could be the place. Knight b2, c3, and so on and so forth. but none of those should put too much fear in Black's heart. You can try grinding something out of this endgame. But yeah, I agree that Black should hold without too much trouble. So sorry, I know nothing. Or, I know quite a bit, but it made me believe that Black is fine. What else we got? We have another classic that I'm not even being asked every season, but every episode. And here we have back-to-back questions. First by Sandstad 2.0, who's saying, "Hi Jan, love your stuff. Thank you. Has there been any developments affecting the Vienna repertoire of your series?" Best Sandstad 2.0. Yeah, if you watch past opening clinics, I've talked a lot about all of those, but this one is not specifically about bishop takes c4, which we get in the next question, in which I literally get 3 times per opening clinic. But we can talk a bit more generally about the Vienna, because there have, of course, been developments. Mainly because everybody, but especially Vishy Anand, seems to have decided to play the Vienna in every game against Magnus. Magnus also had a game against Duda, 2 games against Aronian and so on. They've sort of tried to corner him. But having to show new ideas against the Vienna every time. And Magnus has shown, I don't know, 6 new ideas in this Vienna. So there are, of course, developments. The good news is I still believe in the Vienna. And that guys like Vishy and Aronian keep going for it. Also gives it some extra street cred, I would say. So what developments are there? Maybe we'll answer the bishop takes c4 questions in the next question and focus on the big alternative bishop g5 here. Magnus himself played some b5, but c5 has been my recommendation in my series. And yeah, Magnus showed some fresh ideas here. No, he showed, what did he show? He showed this e5 idea, cd, knight d4, bishop c3, bc, queen a5, ef, queen g5, fg. This is his game against Levon. Queen d2 castles, bishop c4, rook d8, queen e3, bishop d7, which was sort of supposed to be just a bit of a nothing of a line. If white castles here, knight c6 is just equal, knight f3, knight e7. But Magnus went for long castles. I don't think that's a refutation, but it led to a very, very interesting play. Knight c6 was the game. There was also a discussion of this move, knight a6, which my computer quite likes at first sight. Knight a6, intending to play rook to c8. So probably that's my recommendation. I do not believe that long castles alters the assessment of these lines, but it was certainly a very, very fresh and interesting idea. Long castles, h4, rook h3. So you want to be aware of that. What else do we have? He's done so many things. It's hard to keep track. He went knight b5 in a game. Knight takes e4, queen d4. Which I also think is equal. That was certainly fresh as well. This position. This is another game. Carlsen against Vishy. I can't even recall what happened here. Knight to c6, I believe. Bishop to d2. I think I addressed this in the series and I gave something that I still consider to be equal. But I cannot recall it. I'm mainly just going through Magnus's different attempts against the Vienna here. Yeah, I believe e5 should be okay. But yeah, that line exists. Was there something else? This might not be Magnus, but this is a line which I'm not sure. I think I covered. But there are some developments here as well in correspondence. And wherever h4, queen b4, this is the other main line. Rook h3, a6. How does this go? Bishop e2, knight e5, rook b1, queen d6. I think in my series I focused on queen to d2. There's also this move rook c3, which they started playing, which I believe ends in equality as well. There was another try to be aware of, something like short castles, h5, rook to d8, and here rook g3 check, or queen to b3, with very, very complex play, where, yeah, black seems to be alright, but it's certainly another new development. Or I'm not sure how new, but I'm not sure how much detail I gave here. I don't think any of those change the assessment, because I think the Vienna is sound enough that black holds if he knows what he's doing, but of course it is being debated at the highest level constantly, so developments will follow. There were also quite some developments in this bishop d7 line, which Vichy likes to play against Magnus, but that was outside of the scope of my series. I like this move knight bd7, where we've seen a little less action. What else is there? Ah yeah, Magnus also played bishop d2 against Levan Aronian in Baden-Baden. This is a move I had not mentioned. Your computer will no doubt tell you that knight takes e4 is playable here for black. But Levan did not dare to do that, and I think he also kind of equalized after castles queen e2. But Magnus won a nice game there, so you probably want to focus on knight takes e4. So those are the developments off the top of my head. I don't think any of those question the soundness of the Vienna. But yeah, I could probably do a Vienna 2.0 series one of those days. You know how it is with repertoires, even if you give sound lines. Stuff happens. Still, I still believe in Le Viennese. Moving on to the next question, which is kind of the same question, but as mentioned, I want to break them into two, because that way I can split the material between bishop c4 and non-bishop c4 content. And the question is by Mr. Feritarkibzan. Sorry if I bungled the name. He's saying, "Hi Jan. Some days ago I watched your analyze for Vienna in Anand game. You said you changed your mind about the line recommended by you, sacrificing pawn, bishop takes c4. Could you explain more?" Yup, I could, and I have in many previous opening clinics and in the live commentary. But let's do it. So instead of bishop to g5, what's going on here? The, in my opinion, biggest threat for the Vienna is still this pawn sacrifice, bishop takes c4. I also mentioned that in the series. And here, in my series, I gave knight takes c3, bc, bishop e7, which I still don't think loses. But it's, and I pointed that out in the series as well, a bit of a struggle for a draw in many not too exciting lines, stuff like this. And however, the move over goes rook e1, or you can start with bishop f4 as well, after which g5 is risky. And bishop d6, rook e3 leads to similar stuff. Let's say rook e1, bishop d6, bishop f4. These types of positions, black is probably holding after queen d6 or rook f6, but I was never too thrilled to play them. So you could spend more time here and defend those, but following Fabian Caruana's lead, this is a line that I was not aware of at the time of the series. I believe knight f6 has become the main line here, and I would probably also play this if I had to play the Vienna tomorrow. White has two main lines, queen a4 check, knight to c6, and those main lines are knight to e5 or bishop to g5. Bishop g5 is more aggressive, has featured in some Mamedyarov games, for example. I still believe that black is okay after takes, castles. Now white has a bunch of moves. Knight e5, rook fe1, rook fe1 I think was the latest in Mamedyarov Vichy. Here I mentioned, I think Vichy went knight e7, and Mamedyarov got some play connected to this bishop being able to return to c1. I like h6 better when bishop c1 looks a bit clumsy, and bishop h4. Now we go knight e7, and this bishop is cut off from the queen side. Obviously, the theory debate continues from here. White is a pawn down, has full compensation, but I don't think he has more than full compensation, so I consider this to still be a very playable line for black. That's here. The bishop g5 part. There is also the move knight to e5, which was played twice by Magnus recently. Once against Duda, where he won a nice game after this rook b8, rook to d1, and once against Fabi, where Fabi deviated with bishop d6 and managed to hold after takes, bishop d7, queen to f3. When, yeah, I guess white is slightly better, but Caruana managed to defend this. So yeah, I think this is the main battleground after rook b8. Rook to d1, I don't think what Duda did against Carlsen was so bad. This line with castles, knight c6, bc, queen a7. How did it go? Rook b7 here. Should know. No, I think it's bishop d7, sorry. Queen a4, c5, queen c2, cd, rook d4. And here, for example, you can play a move like h6 without allowing this pin on g5, amongst other things. So yeah, I don't think this line is terrible for black. And there is also the move a5, which, as far as I know, is not played as often, but always struck me as reasonably solid as well as Caro-Kann's latest choice, bishop to d6. The problems after rook b8, of course, rook d1 is far from the only move. White has some very solid options here as well, like takes, stuff like this. This is, I guess, some game, maybe Mamadiyar of Caruana, where black doesn't have a lot of winning chances. So black has to be kind of precise to equalize here as well. But I think you should. Therefore, yeah, currently I'm probably team knight to f6. Option number 3, and maybe the one that leaves most play in the position. It's also the riskiest. It's knight c3, bc, and bishop d6 instead of bishop e7. Inviting white to go for this direct attack. With knight g5, h6, queen h5. Short castles, knight e4. I think I talked about this maybe the last episode, where after f5, knight d6, cd, rook e1, I quite like white's chances, but he's a pawn down, and black is reasonably solid. So this is another playable line if you want to mix it up a bit more. But yeah, I never liked it as much as the alternatives, because white also has different random tries in this position. Queen c2, bishop d3, rook e1. All these moves are serious. So bishop d6, I think if you have to play for a win, that's probably your best bet currently, especially against somebody booked up. But it's also very risky. Therefore, yeah, I'm team knight to f6, which is solid. Sometimes you have to be a bit precise in some of the lines I showed. But Caro-Kann also seems to be willing to continue defending this. And I currently probably prefer it over knight c3, bc, bishop e7, even though, as mentioned, I'm not aware of any refutation of the stuff I gave in my series either. Hope that gives you an overview. Then, last and least, we have a question by MrDodgy, who I don't know if he acted in concert with Carnicero or if he came up with this himself. He's saying, "Hi Jan, long-time watcher, first-time questioner. What a question you came up with. Firstly, I'd like to thank you for your years of enthusiasm and determination to create more content." I would almost have bought it, but he put in enthusiasm. And you know, I've watched every season of Curb Your Enthusiasm. And I think I'm pretty good at curbing it. Keep up the great work. Thank you so much, MrDodgy. My question regards the line d4, knight f6 to bishop e3. Much stronger here than after d5. g6, mistake. Followed by queen d2, followed by bishop h6. Is there any way for black to survive? I don't know, MrDodgy. You might have really stumbled upon something there. And the pronunciation should be on stumbled. See, I'm not even witty in my reply. By the way, it's 2:51 a.m. That's not a joke. I don't know why I'm recording at this hour. Seekeful Cup has done weird things to me. So, to bishop e3. Congratulations for coming up with this. Yeah, g6 is probably not the best way to deal with this. I guess d5, for example. You might still struggle a little harder to justify your bishop being here. But maybe Carnicero and you can spend some more time on the virtues of these positions. So, bishop e3, g6, and queen to d2 with the lethal idea of exchanging bishops. Why not queen c1, by the way? Isn't that smarter? Keep an eye on b2, because you know, queen d2, I'll play c6. And I know you will not be able to curb your enthusiasm. And you'll go here, and I'll take. And now I'll play queen b6. And I will have the last laugh by taking all your pawns. I will do the same trick if you go queen to c1. But after queen c1, c6, now if you find some restraint and develop the horsey here, then at least my queen b6 will not hit your pawn on b2. So I think queen to c1 is the right implementation of your very silly idea. So, yeah, I don't know what you're looking for. I'm guessing it's not a serious analysis of this position. Therefore, I will just acknowledge that white might not be much worse here, which is already progress. And I believe to stop your lethal threat, and the lethal threat that the TH is to my English, we should go for the move h6 here. That's the only move I can think of to prevent bishop h6 if we don't go for my c6 queen b6 trap. And now once again you can switch to plan B. You can go knight to c3, d5, f3, and boom, the dodgy Carnicero dream team has reached all their goals. Bishop f2, long castles, followed by e4, and even Badur Jobava would already consider this position forced win for white. Therefore, yeah, I do not see how you can be stopped with 2 bishop e3, MrDodgy, unless it's 2 d5, 2 c6, 2 e6, 2 c5, 2 b6. Is that the list? 2 b5 maybe. 2 b5 looks pretty good as well. But other than that, go for it. I wish you nothing but luck and success with the bishop on e3. I'm still not 100% sure if maybe f4 is a decent square as well. You can still go for the same plans, but you do not have the option to go f3, bishop f2 then. Therefore, pros and cons. Still, maybe you can look at bishop f4 next time. I don't think anybody does d4, knight f6, bishop f4. If we could only find a catchy name for it, like, I don't know, the England system, something like that, this could be the next big thing if bishop e3 happens to not catch on. So, thank you for the questions. Apologies for the 2 bishop e3 material. Do not take my answers to those too seriously, because this move does not deserve serious answers. But other than that, thanks everybody for bringing your questions. I hope we have all learned something, or not, I'm not sure. I hope you all have a lovely weekend if you're watching this on Friday when it's coming out. If not, I hope you have a lovely 2024 if you're watching this in 2023, to check if my Vienna recommendations have stood the test of time. I'm out of here. I hope to see you guys very soon.